The tug of war over waterfront property in Kakaʻako Makai is suspended for now. Owned by the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, the agency wants to develop the area to include residential buildings, which is currently not allowed. But community activists say the coastline should be preserved. The issue was killed by the Speaker of the House, but OHA says it will continue to push the effort. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lara Yamada. In 2012, 30 acres of mostly waterfront property in Kakaʻako Makai was transferred to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs by the state. This is a settlement for overdue revenues owed to OHA that stem from the Public Land Trust. Now, the value of the land, which is on the Makai side of Ala Moana Boulevard, is estimated at $200 million. OHA wants to include residential buildings as part of its master plan to generate as much revenue as possible for beneficiaries. But state lawmakers banned residential development on the land back in 2006. A bill to allow it made its way through the Senate this year, but House Speaker Scott Saiki killed the measure last week when he told opponents of the bill that he would not allow it to advance in the House. But the issue is not going away. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guests. Carmen Hulu Lindsay has served as Maui trustee for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs since 2012. She is currently the board chair. She is the former administrator of Maui County's Land Use and Codes Division and is also the former properties administrator of Maui Land and Pineapple. Democratic Senator Jarrett Ke'ohokalole represents parts of Windward Oahu, including Kaneohe, Kailua, and Ahui Manu. He is the vice chair of the Hawaiian Affairs Committee and the co-chair for the Native Hawaiian Affairs Caucus. Democratic Senator Sharon Moriwaki was elected in 2018. Her district includes Waikiki, Ala Moana, Kakaako, and Mo'iliili. She is a member of the Housing Committee and also the volunteer of the nonprofit organization Kakaako United. And Ron Iwami has been president of Friends of Kewalo since 2005. The nonprofit was formed by recreational users of the Kewalo Basin Park area. The group's mission is to protect and preserve the park and the surrounding shoreline. The retired Honolulu Fire Department captain also loves to surf in his free time, and you can tell by his shirt there, I think. All right, before we get to questions, we want to show a map of the area that we're going to be referring to here. Take a look. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs has highlighted the parcels in light green for commercial mixed use and the parcels in blue as proposed residential sites. And we'll probably take a look at this map a couple times throughout this hour. Okay, let me start with you, Ms. Lindsay. When OHA accepted the land from the state, the ban on the residential development, that was already in place, correct? So this is the second time that lawmakers have rejected OHA's housing proposal. So the thought, is it time then to start developing the area without residential buildings at this point?
Well, we understand that the residential prohibition established by the legislature in 2006 was intended to further protect certain public interest purposes, including the protection of open space and ocean views for the broader public. We also understand that the Kakaako community included these public interest considerations in plans for the area. However, the legislature specifically pivoted on its policy for Kakaako Makai when it transferred these lands to OHA, which again divested them of their public character. Nowhere in the legislative history of Act 15 is any mention that these Native Hawaiian trust lands should continue to be used to protect the ocean views of and open space for area residents or users. In fact, the opposite is true. The committee report for Act 15 specifically states that OHA's Kakaako Makai lands are virtually contiguous, suited for master planning, and located in an area of Honolulu that is already experiencing significant redevelopment. The legislature did not transfer these Kakaʻako Makai lands for OHA to protect the broader public's interests in the area. The legislature specifically transferred these lands to OHA to settle its obligation to the Native Hawaiian people, with the necessary understanding that OHA would be able to exercise its rights and obligations consistent with the self-determination constitutionally envisioned for OHA and its Native Hawaiian beneficiaries. If the legislature won't allow Native Hawaiians to build housing on a former landfill in the middle of a portion of urban Honolulu, experiencing massive commercial and residential development, where will the state allow Native Hawaiians to exercise self-determination over our ancestral lands? Native Hawaiians are being pushed to the outside of the urban core, where another community could oppose proposed land uses intended to benefit our people.
And Mrs. Lindsay, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do want to make sure that we have time for everyone to participate. And so I want to make sure that we get a chance to get back to whatever else you want to share. But I do need to make sure that I spread the love as far as the time for everybody to be able to respond. And I think you've been touching on a number of things already, and we have quite a few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of dive into some of those. And one I have here is for you, Mr. Izumi. And again, Mrs. Lindsay kind of touched on this as far as the confusion over, for a lot of people, whether or not these are public lands or not. So the question is, from a viewer, why did the members of Friends of Kewalo's wear red shirts at the rally that said, quote, save public lands, when these are not public lands, but became Native Hawaiian trust land when the state conveyed these acres, 30 acres, to the state in 2012? And this individual who emailed saying that they felt like that was deceptive on the parts of those who are saying that this is something otherwise. What's your response?
Well, I just want to say that I think it's still, technically, it's trust lands, but I feel, and many other people feel the same way, that it is public lands because OHA is a public entity and elected by all the people of Hawaii, Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians alike. And also, I can run for OHA trustees if I wanted to. So, and also OHA is being funded by the state, which is, the state government. So in our eyes, the land is still public. Plus we fought for the exact same land in 2005 and 6, except it was a different entity we're fighting against. It was Alexander and Baldwin. And actually OHA was at our side fighting this development to do pretty much the same thing that OHA wants to do today. So it's the same public land, and that's why we use our same shirt that says public land not for sale.
So I want to get one more opinion in here. Maybe you can do a Junkanpo, Senator Moriwaki or Ke Ohukalole. Your opinion on, or your view on whether or not this is public land or not.
So, when we talk about the history, because I acknowledge 15 years ago, the community came together and fought development. But if you look at the whole history, because the beginning of time in Kakaako didn't start in 2005, this area was originally a Hawaiian fishing village that was wiped out by a disease epidemic. Eventually, it became a shanty town for displaced Hawaiians, many of whom were moved off of their ancestral lands by the sugar plantations. And then that shanty town was raised to make way for the modern community we have in Kakaako today. So, I think it's kind of ironic that we are here again saying we don't want Hawaiians living here. And frankly, I don't think it's really fair to lump OHA in with the REITs across the street who are building these egregious luxury units and offshoring profits. This is about building housing for Hawaiians.
Senator Moriwaki, did you want to respond?
Yeah, okay. I'll take a stab at this. And the question was, is it public lands or not? And I think that it is public land. Public land has a different definition of ceded lands, and so that's the differentiation made with public lands. But nevertheless, even with the settlement in 2012, OHA had its eyes wide open. They came in and they were asked, will you take this land as is, where is? And it came with restrictions. In fact, if you go back to the law in 2012, it was clear that they were taking it with the restrictions. There was no residential development allowed. There were height restrictions. And so I just go back as legislators, we look at the law, we say what was there, and it came out with 2012. They were asked, and there were two bills. One was for the transfer of land, and that was public land, and the other was to allow them to build residential. The one that allowed them to build residential died, and they could have at that time said, this is not a good deal. But they took the land as is and where is, and here we are today. So I go back to it as a legislator, going back to the law. We made the law. If we don't like the law or it's outlived its usefulness, we repeal the law. But this has not been the case, and this is all public. And what Ron is saying, public land is government land that's used for purposes as defined by law or in the agreement.
Mrs. Lindsay, I want to give you a chance to respond, but let me just do a quick follow-up question here. We've got a lot of questions. And then also Senator Ke'ohokalola, you can also respond to this one as well. The question is from Joycelyn, are you okay then with OHA building on what is already allowed to be built under existing law? That includes up to 200 feet, approximately 20 floors. So are you okay with that part about the plans with the office space, other commercial uses, whatever else they may want to do? Is it just with the residential and above the 200 feet that you have a problem with, Senator Moriwaki?
Yes, I think that's what the law is. The law is that there are the Hawaii Community Development Authority actually sets the law. So when OHA took the properties, they were restricted to follow the zoning and the rules land use that is set by HCDA. So if it's a commercial, and in fact, I think the settlement agreement itself says that they could build public meeting place, public markets, commercial enterprise, all of that is good. And the restriction of the height, as long as they stay within the height that HCDA has in its rules, that is fine. And I think the highest you can build is 200 feet.
And Senator Ke'ohokalola, same opinion?
Yes. So if you read that law, what it does say, as Senator Moriwaki points out, is that OHA is allowed to build an array of commercial uses. They can build a hospital there. They can build yoga studios there, spas. They can build a Margaritaville if they want. They can build another Aloha Tower marketplace for tourists. But housing for Hawaiians is a non-starter. I think what we're talking about here is, because I understand the open space. I understand the desire to keep open space, but we're talking about 100 acres of land in Honolulu near the rail line. OHA owns a fraction of that 100 acres. And this proposal is to build high density housing on a fraction of OHA's fraction of that land. And in the alternative, one of those parcels is industrial. There are a lot of things that they can do to just seek a profit. And this effort is an intention to build housing in an area where I think we really desperately need it.
Mrs. Lindsay, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, I want to first respond to Mr. Iwami in that although anyone can run for OHA, the beneficiaries of OHA are strictly Hawaiian people. It's not anybody. And the trustees are the only people that can make decisions on this Native Hawaiian trust lands. It's not public lands. I did want to say that.
Thank you.
And your other responses, Ms. Lindsay, to what our senators here tonight have been saying about how they view what should be allowed and whether or not residential buildings should be allowed, and their concerns over how that may interfere with what else is happening in that area and what is currently allowed under the law.
Well, housing is such an important part of our people. There's so many people that need homes. I mean, the Hawaiian homes list has 28,000 people on it. And we're supposed to at least participate in providing housing for everyone, not only the Hawaiians. But I just happen to know the statistics of our Hawaiian people because that is our job here at OHA. However, we could do so much good for the people if we are able to put some housing in there. Why not housing? Why just commercial? I think we need to bring our people back to the land. What's wrong with having the Hawaiians live in Kakaako? We need to bring our people back. They were kicked out long time ago before it was even filled, before that place was filled with whatever is down there. Our Hawaiians occupied that land. And now we can't have our Hawaiians live there? Something's so wrong with that picture.
So Mike from Makiki is to be more specific. He's being more specific and saying, could the land be developed for housing for Native Hawaiians only? Is that something that was either a consideration, and would that change the minds of anyone if that were the scenario?
Are you asking me, ma'am?
Yes. You first.
Well, I think that there is a possibility for us to develop only for Native Hawaiians, but that would have to be with a partnership of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. And that's a decision that we haven't made yet, but we have talked with them.
For anyone else here on the panel, does that changes anybody's opinion if that were to be the scenario?
I think the residential, because of the density and it brings to the area, and it is built on hazmat and has karst when you have high rises that's built. I think the intent in 2005, Senator Keoho Kalole says, okay, it was there's a lot of history, but I think what came to light in 2005. When there was a lot of discussion of what to do on the shoreline, when Alexander and Baldwin was going to build luxury high rises on the shore side, because it's beautiful, beautiful property, that the community came together, the legislature came together and said, we want to make a commitment that this is to be open shoreline. This is the only space that's here in the urban area that would be not just for the people living here, but for future generations. It really is a place of spiritual rejuvenation that you can go there, and it's for keiki. I mean, I was talking to one of my colleagues in the House, and he said, someone called me and said, I used to teach you swimming, and, I'm calling you to vote no on that bill because we go there, and it's a place that we find healing. So I think that's what we had envisioned this area to be, a cultural meeting place, a place where people can really develop the Native Hawaiian culture, teaching the arts and the history, and some place where everybody would have a cultural gathering place. So I think that was the concept, and I think you can go back to what Ron was working on, because I think it took 5 years, and OHA was involved in coming up with that vision for this area so that it would be open. The idea being that all of the high rise and congestion on the Mauka side, on the other side of Moana Boulevard, they had no open space. So this was a way not only for them to use, but all of Hawaii to use, and it was to meet the best and highest aspirations for Hawaii's people. And that's kind of the big overall concept that's there. So I think building residential and selling the property off is, even if it's for the Native Hawaiians, which I'm not sure, and maybe Ms. Lindsay can talk about who would benefit from the development, that I would not think that it's going to be affordable housing. If it were, maybe there's something to consider. But it really is prime property, and it was to be set aside for future generations and all of us, not just people living there. So
Now, I do want to move on to some other questions, but Ms. Lindsay, I wanted it, since this is directed at you, did you want to respond?
Uh,
To
I
Senator
would be
Moriwaki?
happy to. Yes. What was her concern? Senator Moriwaki.
yeah, so just that the whole concept that this was a commitment to the people of Hawaii, their highest and highest aspirations for the people, that this would be built as a cultural meeting place. It would be a place where you would teach and have culture and the arts of Native Hawaiians, marketplace. And so the commercial was to bring a lot of people into the area. And it would also be where all of the people in congested urban Honolulu would find this could be a place that they could find rejuvenation of mindfulness, of coming out to the shoreline.
Well, I just want to say that we probably will do exactly that as part of our commercial areas of our lands. It still doesn't, 30 acres is a lot of acreage. And I don't see why we can't include some housing for people. Housing is such a necessity. And why would we allow 22 towers across the street for a foreign developer and not allow our Hawaiian people to live there? You know, I don't understand the resentment by the people that's opposing this.
Now, there's been a couple of questions, Senator, I'm sorry, Mr. Iwami, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I wanted to respond about having residential for the Hawaiian people only. But just to take it further, I want to say that we will not agree to residential housing there. And the main reason why is once you let one person build residential, it opens the floodgates and other landowners will want to build residential too. So our worst fear is that area, Kakaʻako Makai, becoming another Waikiki, where, you know, everybody, the floodgates are open and all these developers want to come in. And we would lose control of that land, just like how we lost control of Waikiki.
So I think some people do take issue with what's happened on the other side of the street. And I'm going to turn this question over to Senator Kehokalole. He said, the viewer asks, could you explain to us why, and this is their words, could you explain to us why you said it's shameful for this state to allow luxury residential towers to be developed right across the street from OHA's lands at Kakaako, but not allow OHA to develop its lands for residential units, even with Hawaii's severe housing shortage? So I think, you know, there's some people are concerned with what's already been developed and been allowed to develop just on the other side of the street, when there seems to be a little bit of maybe a double standard on the Makai side of the street.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's the result of 25 years of housing policy that, you know, we should have. This is a controversial statement, but I think we need to have this discussion. You know, the objectives that were put forward by the community 15 years ago, I think need to be put in context today. We have 28,000 Hawaiians on the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's wait list. Okay, but we have a 22,000 unit shortage of housing on Oahu. And that's not Hawaiians, that's for everyone. That's for young families and kupuna. We are desperately short housing. And, you know, if we're not going to do housing here, for the last 25 years, it's always been about preserving open space and sending the development somewhere else. Just in this last year, affordable housing projects in Chinatown, Hawaii Kai, and Kailua were defeated for the same reasons that this prohibition was put in place in 2005. And so what I'm saying is, I think we should, I'm going to push back on that contention that what we did 15 years ago is still something we need to continue to consider today. If you look at that map, Kakaako Waterfront Park is not included in OHA's land base. The park itself we're not bulldozing that or proposing to bulldoze that, even if you let all the private property owners develop that area. There are reasons why we're losing population, and part of it is we cannot build housing anywhere. And that's part of the reason why some of these REITs that offshore profits sit on their land until they can build the most expensive, egregious thing possible. I think it's disgusting. We need to change it. There are models even in Kakaako that work, that are for local people, that local people live in now. 801 South Street is a good example of that, which was fought by the community. Why can't we do that over there? I think that's the conversation we should have.
I would turn the question to you, Doctor. See, that's my problem working at a hospital. To Mr. Iwami about the development that's already happened on the Mako side of the street and opposing residential development on the Makai side of the street. Is there a double standard there as far as your opinion? If you think about what's already been allowed in that Kakaako area.
Okay. Yeah, I want to answer that question like this, though. All the development, Malka of Alamana Boulevard, has been following the rules of that land, the zoning of the land, and all the ACDA rules. And it's like private land. It's Howard Hughes's land. It's, Kamehameha School's land, A&B's land. Whereas the land on the Makai side, like I said, I consider it public land. And the law states you cannot build residential on that public land. That's the difference. That's why it's so difficult to fight the Howard Hughes Towers, because it's their land and they're following the rules. They're not trying to change the rules.
Here's another question for you also, Mr. Iwami. This is from Hi'ile in Manoa. She says, OHA parcels are located at Kakaako Makai, Kewalo Beach Park across the harbor. Friends of Kewalo's has repeatedly stated that OHA plans for development that will block beach access. Can you explain how beach access at Kewalo Beach Park will be blocked by OHA's plans on parcels across the harbor?
Well, I go back to our worst fear of opening the door or the floodgates. Once we allow one exception to the rule, others will be hard to stop. And there are other landowners there. So to answer that question, it's hard to describe. It'll alter public access to what it is now, because it's added population, added traffic, lack of parking, or more competition for the parking than there is now because of an influx of density and population to the area. So like I said, look at Waikiki. Do you feel that is accessible to the local people? So we're looking at the big picture of what can happen, because OHA was so very unclear on their plan of what they actually want to do on that land.
So, Mrs. Lindsay, I'm going to give you a chance to respond, and I'm going to throw out a similar question as well from Joycelyn. This is similar. There are assertions that OHA residential development would result in reduced access and reduced open space. OHA properties have either structures on them that are already concreted over. So how would then development of residential directly impact community access to existing open spaces? Are you suggesting that OHA would convert these lands to open space instead of generating revenue to meet its obligation to serve beneficiaries? So they're looking at it saying, it's already sort of concreted over. You already have some access to the beach area there. So what's your opinion as to whether or not this would change access to public spaces and to the beach?
This would definitely not change access to public spaces, because the entire front belongs to the city and county of Honolulu, along with the large park. And it's a beauty there. We appreciate that. So Hawaiians being a water people, there's no way that we would block our access to the ocean. So I think what Mr. Iwami is saying is that he doesn't want a lot of people there because it's going to cramp his style if he wants privacy on the open areas. That's kind of what I'm hearing from him, because he says it'll open the gates to more housing, more people. I have to say, however, that we need people there to bring life to the place. Right now it's dead, you know? And I'm so excited to see the possibility of having residential with commercial and just having a beautiful community there, just like they do across the street.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, I mentioned that OHA's plans for the area was very vague. So it made the public speculate because we're not given details. So, Chair Lindsay, can you paint a clear picture for us on what you plan to build residential now, especially on the properties that you want to raise the height limit from 200 to 400? That's like 2 properties, right?
Yes.
What are your, can you make it clear what you want to build on those 2 properties and for who, and for like affordable rental, and like how much it would be for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom?
Can I just interject here? Excuse me. You know, again, to lump OHA in with the A and Bs and Howard Hughes's that the community fought 15 years ago is jumping to a lot of conclusions, and I think putting the cart before the horse. And frankly, this is what I'm talking about. Controversial statement coming. For the last 25 years, we've been doing this everywhere. And that's why we have a 22,000 unit shortage of housing on Oahu. We can't build in our urban core over here next to the rail line, where millennials who I know live in places like 801 South Street don't own cars. I have friends that live there that don't have driver's licenses. They walk or bike or Uber. We can't build on our ag lands. We can't build in the country. We can't build next to our suburban communities. We can't build anywhere. And what happens is our young people are leaving. We are short, critically, police, doctors, and teachers because they can't find places to live. So I understand that this place was intended to be a place of cultural rejuvenation. But for who, if we don't have Hawaiians here because they live on the mainland?
You know, I want to turn this to, I'm going to turn to you, Senator Moriwaki, but I want to throw in these questions too that hopefully you can kind of include in your response, because it has to do with, you know, people asking about, okay, where will the affordable housing then be? So I'm just going to kind of lump these together, and I think you can manage. Becky saying, if we aren't building in the urban core along the rail line, then where? Ag lands, suburbs? Are we saying that we're okay with our lack of housing and homeless situation? And another one from Lauren saying, do you oppose development of affordable or workforce housing and towers on OHA parcels? So a lot of people concerned about, okay, if not here, where else is going to be, whether it's referring to Native Hawaiians or the young people who want to stay here or homeless.
I think we are looking at the rail line. We are looking at, there are other places. I think what we're saying is, what is the appropriate place to build? I mean, Senator Keokalole had a problem with just a 6-story building in Kawainui in Kailua. And to me, that is where it was across the street from a commercial area. That should have been a housing project that should have gone. When you
just
look
like here.
at the shoreline and you look at what we have left of the shoreline, once you build a building, it stays there, and it affects all future generations. So we're not saying don't build housing. We're just saying, where do you build housing? And it should be appropriate. And there are other places that, we have a House resolution that's going through, and the idea is let's stop fighting. Let's get together, find some solutions that work. Maybe land exchange where there are good properties of value that you could build what OHA wants to build, and find solutions that work rather than constantly coming back. I think part of the problem is that the law is the law, and I mean nobody's trying to deprive OHA of the right to build for Native Hawaiians. We want to help the Native Hawaiians. A lot of the bills in the legislature does that. But we need to look at what is appropriate, what is really working for everyone, and come to the table and at least have a discussion. We have not done that. And this resolution at least brings people to the table, looks at, is this the proper place? There is a plan that OHA was involved in 2011. It was approved by HCDA, the governing authority for this area. So go back to it, wipe it off, say, okay, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe Senator Keokalole is right. Maybe, times have changed. We need to look at it, but not just, plop in, this is what we're going to do. And I think that there are options if you look at coming together and to the table.
So, Mrs. Lindsay, I see you shaking your head there in response to some of the things she had to say, whether it be coming to the table or other options that are available. Your response.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that it's the Board of Trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs that has the exclusive fiduciary duty to develop those lands, and not anybody else, not the legislature, not the governor, not anybody else. We are given that duty to do what we must do to bring revenue in, to provide for our people's different programs. Our people are suffering. There's so much disparity. And, the more revenue we can bring in, the better we can help them. And also take them off the streets and give them a home. That's our job. That's our job as trustees. I don't know what the job of the representative and senators are, but I know what my job is. And that is to try to take care of our people.
Now, Mrs. Lindsay.
I do want to respond to that. I appreciate Ms. Lindsay's really helping and the Native Hawaiians and OHA and being responsible for OHA's properties and what you have in trust. But we also, as legislators, have the law and we follow the law. And until that law is repealed, we follow the law. So the law is that the property is not to be built upon residential, and you have to go before the HCDA, which still has the right, even
We're aware of that.
2012 law, under the 2012 settlement that OHA agreed to. It says that you still must go before HCDA, and HCDA's law still ruled by a state law that says no residential building on Makai side. So until that law is changed, that is the law. You can build whatever you want on OHA land, but it must follow the law.
Yeah, I'm aware.
What I'm saying is that as legislators, we want to make sure that until that law is changed, that we follow the law. And so that I think is where we kind of, rub together. And the law, in 3 times that OHA has come back to change that law, it has not been changed. So I think going to the table and saying, okay, this is not working, let's find another way. And I think that's all that the resolution asks for, is let's get back together. In 2005, the same protest occurred, and there was a resolution. The law was you can't build residential, but come to the table and find a way that you can work together. OHA and its neighbors come together, and let's find some other way than coming back over and over to try to change a law that hasn't.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Lindsay. So why do you think it is that this has come before lawmakers, 2-3 times now, and it hasn't been able to pass? What do you think have been the barriers? What do you think is standing in the way of this passing or the law changing?
I think it's definitely the no residential law. However, I do happen to know that the law that was created in 2006 was a special legislation law, which is really not allowed, but it was created then. And when we took this land from the state, we were encouraged that we should come back to the legislature to get our entitlements. That was not part of the deal. So in good faith, we took the lands, and we did a lot of study on it. However, and in answer to Mr. Iwami's concern, we couldn't be more clear as to what we wanted to build because we didn't know whether we could build residential or not. That makes a lot of difference in a master plan. You know, we have to be able to know if we can build a condominium with housing for our people, then the master plan will be done accordingly. But this way we can build a hospital. But do we want to build a hospital? No, we want to take care of our people that need housing. And there's so many of them. We haven't been able to draw those plans, ma'am.
So this is a question from Gregory, and I actually, this is back to you, sorry, Mrs. Lindsay. He's asking, he's saying, okay, for a Hawaiian who lives in Kakaako, he wants to know why you focus on deciding to purchase this land, knowing it had these stipulations attached to it. In his mindset, thinking, if you already knew this was going to be a battle, why not look somewhere else?
I'd like to say that prior to being offered this lands in 2012, we went through negotiations with the state for 20 years. They're trying to pay us for the public land trust monies that they couldn't pay us in cash. And at one time it went before the legislature, other lands, and it was turned down. It was turned down. And finally with this governor, he was able to get it passed through the legislature. But there was this resistance on residential because of the 2006 law that was passed, and he told us, come back again. And we are thinking, trusting and having a good faith, we're thinking, oh, the legislators are going to see the need for housing. And we didn't think it was going to be a threat. And here we are. And by the way, we only came back twice, not 3 times. 2014 was the last time that we went to the legislature, and we got turned down. So we tried again this year, and we were so excited when it passed the Senate with 19 of 25 votes. And we thought, that's great. But as soon as it entered the House, Speaker Saiki killed it.
Now, Senator Ke'o you've been involved in a lot of these discussions for quite some time now. So I want to get your opinion. We've been hearing, Senator Moriwaki and also Mrs. Lindsay explain a little bit more about their standpoint right now. Your thoughts?
So I wasn't in the legislature in 2006. In 2006, I was a senior at UH Manoa, waiting tables across the street at the old spaghetti factory and bodyboarding 3 times a week at Kewalo's.
Did you enjoy?
The reason I say that is that was 15 years ago. I have 3 kids now, and we live with my wife's family because it's too expensive. And my wife has a master's degree, and I'm an attorney. My brother, who I wish was in Kaneohe, rents in Melilani with no housing stability, and my other brother lives with his partner in Waianae, away from our family lands in Kaneohe, because it's too expensive to live there. I think that's the point that I'm going to keep coming back to on this, because Mr. Iwami is right. That's a fair point to make, the fear of opening the floodgates. But you know what? I think in 2021, that needs to be weighed against our 22,000 unit housing shortage on Oahu, because our young people are leaving. My friends, my family, my classmates, I see them go. I'm friends with them on social media now. And so that's what I come back to. I understand what the efforts were about, what the efforts were for, but I think we need to be accountable to the fact that for the last 25 years, 10,000 kids graduate from Hawaii high schools a year, and we've averaged 3,500 housing units being built a year. We're not leaving a place for our children. And so I understand the history and the fights that took place, but I'm asking now, because I see what's happening to young families, because I have a young family. I see these guys on social media in Las Vegas, in Houston, in California. They go to college, our best and brightest, and they don't come back because they can't afford to stay here. We need lots of housing. We need density in places where we can handle it. And it's shown that it works in Kakaako. I just think we need to have this discussion come full circle and talk about the consequences of continuing to do what we've done for a generation.
So I'm going to toss this over to you too, just to maybe expand on what you're saying. Janine saying she wants know a little bit more about, okay, if there were development in this area, residential development, to break it down a little bit more and give more details. I think Mr. Iwami was asking this as well. She's saying, would this be quote unquote affordable housing built? And what would they cost? How are the Hawaiians on the wait list for housing benefiting? How are they going to be able to afford and to live in these residential areas? Another question about whether or not these are going to be homes that would be sold or not. So I think Mrs. Lindsay and maybe Senator Ke'oho Kalole, because you've been in these discussions as well, if you want to chirp in, people are thinking about this, but wanting to know more details and feeling like they need more details about if this were to be considered again, how exactly is that truly going to benefit the people who need this type of affordable housing?
Well, so again, I think on a lot of these discussions, we put the cart before the horse, and assuming that OHA is going to treat the land like Howard Hughes would, I think is jumping to a lot of conclusions. The OHA trustees are elected by members of the public. They are not private corporations, like Mr. Iwami said. So if there's some sort of egregious luxury development that is proposed by OHA, when they have to go through the myriad of permitting and environmental and entitlement requirements, even if the law was changed, there are multiple places in the process where the community, where Hawaiian beneficiaries can get involved to change the trajectory of that. Personally, I think 801 South Street is the perfect example of what we should be doing. And the reason I say that is because I have friends that live there, working professionals in Honolulu that don't own cars and walk to work. And they own units. And you know what? They're small, they're dense, but local people, local young people who really want to stay here, they've purchased, they live there, they rent there, right? I'm not saying, I would be the first one protesting if OHA proposes to build $22 million lofts on the shoreline over there. But the reason I'm involved in this is because we need housing. And that's what I'm going to be advocating for if the law is changed. And another thing about sticking to the law, my first year in office, burying your family in the traditional ʻewa way, which is the long bones. It's cremation, but you keep the bones, ʻewa. Burying your family in a regular cemetery in the ʻewa way was potentially a criminal violation. I wrote the bill that changed that law. When the law doesn't apply in the public interest, we need to change the law. And that's what I'm saying is if we're going to have this discussion about what we did and why we did it 15 years ago, let's apply the context of 15 years later and the fact that we have a whole generation of families that are leaving because they cannot afford to stay here.
And Mrs. Lindsay, a little bit more to you as far as maybe people not knowing enough and needing more details about how they would really truly be able to afford this residential housing if it were available, and how else they might be able to benefit if residential housing were allowed to be built in that area.
Well, we are proceeding with our plans, even without the approval from the legislature, and doing our master planning. And at that point, we'll be able to decide how high, how much, how big, who we're serving. I know our thoughts are that we're going to be serving the workforce. Our workforce people that work in central Honolulu, they want to live there. They can walk to work. Our concentration will be there. We have not planned because we did not know whether we could do residential or not, but we will keep those lots open while we don't have the approvals. But we will plan so that when we come back next year, we'll be more clear as to what we want to build, and hopefully our legislators will agree with us and give us our approval.
Mr. Iwami,
Can I
you
say
wanted to?
something?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that because the plans were so unclear, like I said before, the public was speculating and fearing for the worst. All we had to go by was the facts of the bill, which says the first fact is they want to raise the height limit from 200 feet to 400 on 2 parcels. The second is they want to lift the residential ban for the Kakaʻako Makai land. And the third is they want the ability or the option to convey the land to a third party. And conveying the land to a third party actually means transferring ownership to a third party. So they can build their 400-foot towers, which they're asking a variance for, and also they can build anything they want there because they will be the new owners of the land. And you know, Chair Lindsay, you said that you're going to develop, OHA is going to develop that land. But why then did you put that clause into the bill that you can convey the land to a third party? It could be Howard Hughes, it could be A&B, it could be people from China.
Mr.
And they're
Iwami,
going to, yeah.
we did not put those words into the bill. The Attorney General's office did.
Okay, but it's in there and for people to see.
Well, we didn't write the bill.
Okay, well, I did not know that. I thought it came from you. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But that scares the people. It's like you can sell the land.
We only have a few more minutes left, but I do want to make sure we get to a couple other questions. One, I think some of this has to do with sort of trust and you know, building trust. And I know over the years there's been a lot of OHA's had to deal with a lot of controversy in different ways. And so Thomas is asking about state audits and you know, his peace of mind and you know, as far as what's being followed through on that it's required every 4 years, that it was suspended in December 2019 by Liz Kondo by the state auditor's office because of, Thomas saying, because of OHA's failure to disclose important information concerning OHA's real estate and funding arrangements between trustees and the owners. So, you know, he's asking, will OHA comply with the state auditor's request? And also a follow-up question to Senator Kaholole. Will you ensure that the state audit will be conducted before any additional funds are given to OHA? So to you, Ms. Lindsay, first. Go ahead.
Well, I'd just like to say that our decision to not give Mr. Kondo our documents is because it was attorney-client privilege documents, which we took to court, and the judge agreed with us. And as a result, it's a matter of privacy, and the judge agreed, so we did not give those documents. However, we gave our auditor 19,000 documents, and I can't explain why he would need any more.
And quickly, Senator Kaholole.
So I've already discussed this with OHA. As soon as all of the audits are completed, I've met with the chair of the Senate Hawaiian Affairs Committee. We intend to do an open briefing with the auditor, with the OHA's private auditors that they're required by law to contract and do third-party audits with. And if it takes 8 hours, let's just go through all of it. And thankfully now we have remote access and live stream capability at the Capitol so everybody can watch.
And I apologize, we only have a couple minutes left, so very, very briefly, about 20 seconds each to you, Senator Moriwaki. Did you have any final thoughts?
I just think that OHA and the community needs to get together. So I really urge looking at, and I understand Senator Kewalo's concern about housing. Yes, housing, there's land around, that if there are some discussions that at least come together. I always believe that collaboration, cooperation, working together is really very critical.
And Mr. Iwami, about 20 seconds to you.
Okay, I just hope that we can now all come to the table in the Hawaiian way, like the Ho'oponopono, to pave a way that we can move forward with these lands for all the people of Hawaii.
And Senator Ke'ohokalole, Just briefly.
I completely agree with Mr. Iwami. I've learned things in this discussion. I completely agree with Senator Moriwaki. I think that it's pretty obvious that there needs to be some communication between the parties. But if we're going to save it, we got to ask who we're saving it for.
And Mrs. Lindsay, final seconds to you.
Well, I'd like to thank Senator Moriwaki and Ron for their input, and I do understand how they feel about the lands in front of them. But I do have an extreme passion to help our people, and I believe that these lands were given to us for us to use to the highest and best use. And I have made it very clear to the speaker that OHA is not going to have it exchanged or sold.
All right. All right. Thank you for your final thoughts, and mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. We had a whole lot of questions. We thank our guests. Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board Trustees Chair Carmen Hulu Lindsay, State Senator Jarrett Keohokalole, State Senator Sharon Moriwaki, and Ron Iwami, President of Friends of Kewalos. All right, next week on Insights, violence against Asian Americans has been on the rise since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The push to raise awareness, and call out these acts of racism. Please join us then. I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui hou.